guys, we're back with part 2 of the Bebop lesson series. So I'm going to put to work the stuff that we talked about in the first part, looking at the scales and some of the licks that we talked about and also were in the handout. Those of you who haven't seen part 1, I'm going to have a link to it in the channel description here, or in an annotation, or you can go to my channel and you can find it there. So let's start off with a 2-5-1 in the key of G. Okay, my 2 is an A minor 7. My 5 is a D9 in this case. It can be a D7, D9, D13. It can be altered, but for right now we're going to go with D9. Because if we have to alter the chord, then I have to alter the line, and we're not going to do that quite yet. So I'm going to start thinking of the 2 and the 5 as being the same harmonic element. Play them as though they're the same chord when you're improvising. I'm going to start on a D bebop dominant scale for the first 4 beats over the A minor 7 chord. That takes me to here. From this point I'm going to do one of the licks we did from the last video. And that takes me to the downbeat of the next measure. So that's 2 measures worth of notes right there. I'm going to play it very slowly for you. Okay, some of my shifts were a little weird. Let's try that one more time. That's one of the things about the bebop language that's tough, is finding where to shift your positions on the guitar. I'm not going to tell you where to do that. You figure that out, because I haven't figured all of it out myself. I just go wherever I can. I grab what I can grab and get what I can get. Kind of like life. So that is a 2-5-1 using the scale and the lick that we worked on. I could do the same thing by modifying that lick, for example. Moving that part of the line up, and it makes it much more interesting. It keeps it in the same harmonic range. We end on a nice pretty F sharp. So and that's a 2-5-1 using the bebop materials. There's a lot of generic materials that we can use, very simple, and we put them together in a modular fashion and build lines. And I know that sounds a little non-creative to a lot of people, but we're talking about a language, and every language, like the written language or a spoken language, has figures of speech, expressions that you use to indicate you know the language that you speak, and people understand where you're coming from, what kind of person you are. It's the same thing in jazz. You know, we have figures of speech in different dialects of jazz that send signals to audience members and other musicians that we get the tradition of the music we're coming from. We understand it. And there's a little bit of that in this music as well. It's not how you just link all the blocks together and make a line. You can do that out of a book. That's easy. It's how you make it your own and adapt the language and say your own story. You know, even though we all have the same vocabulary, there's no 2 stories alike. Let's start with a couple different lines now. We've got A minor 7, D9, G major 7. A couple of the materials that we used before, I'm going to add a couple new things. One of the basic things you can do is start with A minor 7 arpeggio. Couldn't be easier. Now from there you can go a lot of different directions. Again, I'm borrowing these 3 notes from the A minor bebop or the D dominant bebop. They're both the same. There's another interesting line. So what I did, that's a very common bebop lick, and I'm going to put that in the handout. That's one that you should really know. It's put in the middle of a line, put in the front of the line, sometimes put at the end of a line. How did I finish that? I don't remember now. There it is. So I put an enclosure around the A and ended up on the F sharp again. So we have a couple of generic materials that we used. We used that one. Those were just connecting notes to get to the next place. That's a very common generic piece of music. When I went to grad school in Indiana University, we called it Indiana Bebop. Indiana Bebop. Just as a way of remembering it. And it starts on the root of the dominant scale. And then we did a little enclosure around the A. And from there you can almost add these notes, redirecting the line to go where you want to go. My ending point was F sharp. It's still the same place. Because I like that sound. I could end in a different chord tone if I wanted to. That's where I just chose to end it. So we have this line, and we can end on a third of the chord. I could take that same line and make it an octave higher. Basically the same line. So what we're doing is we're taking pieces of lines and putting them together and adding scale material in between to connect them and making sure that we're landing on chord tones on the downbeats, and then we resolve on a proper chord tone so that the line doesn't have to stop. We don't have to stop, reboot, and keep going. We can keep the flow moving. That's kind of the essence of what bebop is about. Let's do a couple other materials. Let's look over something more interesting. How about a minor 2/5? For example, a E minor 7 flat 5 followed by an A altered of some kind, and then a D minor 7. We can do the same thing, because this, as I talked about last week, we also finger this the way we finger a C9 chord. And the minor 7 flat 5 is actually a diatonic chord. It's the 7th degree chord of the major scale. I'm using the C dominant bebop over the E, E half diminished, or E minor 7 flat 5. All I have to do to modify it to cover the A is add a C sharp. I'm going to do that right now. That was it, and I landed on the third of the D minor. What did I do? I did something different that time. I'm sorry, I don't remember what I did. It comes out different every time. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. Maybe that was it. I'm thinking of the chord tones and chromatic moves. Something like that, and that's a very good phrase ender. So I keep coming up with new ideas every time I'm playing it, and I guess that's the way it should be. I'm going to transcribe all these materials, and I'm going to give them to you as a handout, just like I did with the last one, so you can practice these. And I want you guys to practice these in all different keys and be able to execute them in different musical situations. We're going to look at some tunes. Like I said last time, next lesson we're going to look at some actual tunes and try to play this stuff over some tunes, and maybe I'll just stop trying to teach it and just play something for a minute, and we'll see how it works. So until next time, keep practicing. We'll see you later.